Well, guys, today is the day the head of the snake did come out, and I'm doing my big collection of videos to cover as much of it as possible for you all. In this video specifically, I'm looking at a huge chunk of the patch notes. In fact, the majority of the patch notes, but they all revolve around one specific area of the game, and that is Fractals of the Mist. Now, if you don't play Fractals at the moment and think, oh, it's not for me, do consider that Fractals exist at multiple different difficulty scales, and they really are incredibly easy early on. Fractals had done nothing but improve over 2016, and this first patch at the start of 2017 has had an enormous amount of stuff. They've really pulled their fingers out, and I think you should see, hopefully from this video, if you stick it out, that it really is a place to start getting involved with, and it is, from my personal experience, a lot of renewable, very enjoyable content in the game. So the footage in the background you're watching mostly is probably the most interesting stuff. It is the new overhaul that they did for this patch, that being the Thaumanova reactor. So this has been a plan that they've expressed to us for a while now.
On here, do you?
No, but I know that things were fine until your precious special consultant came along.
Every now and then when a big patch comes out, a existing fractal might be overhauled or an entirely new one might end up coming into the game. This overhaul doesn't just change mechanics, doesn't just refine things in the Thaumanova reactor, but it actually adds a lot of new dialogue too, and in a weird way kind of some new set pieces and reimaginings of some of the fights altogether, like the start of the instance. So I'm going to share that with you all. We'll talk about exactly what the changes are with that fractal right here at the start, and then I want to go into the many other changes that have also happened with fractals, and I kind of want to in detail explain the significance of them. Fractals is something I've really got into quite a lot, so I think I've got some reasonable insights I can give you all as to why some of these changes are indeed so damn good. So from ArenaNet's words, first on the Thaumanova rework, they say this, that the Thaumanova fractal was lacking in many areas, and so it's undergone a significant rework. Some people were speculating, by the way, that this was going to be the rework a little bit before the patch came out. You'll recall current events in which there's this weird portal stuff going on, a character who says 97, 97, 97 over and over and over again, and I believe Fractal 97 is still the Thaumanova reactor. There are quite a few theories that maybe because of the nature of what that explosion is and the portals in there too, that it might be connected to current events, and a lot of us were waiting for a potential rework here to maybe push things forward, so keep your eye out with all of that too. But so the devs say this, they say that the changes aim to reduce frustration, to improve theming, messaging, story presentation, and generally make the fractal feel more epic and believable. It's funny actually that they say those were their ambitions. Now from my experience of having played it, and hopefully now that the patch is out and you guys get in there and get to play it too, you'll agree with me, it's funny, it actually feels a little bit less epic. It's a better story presentation, don't get me wrong, but it's a bit slower now, and there's a lot more characters, and they kind of talk more, and it feels like there's a lot more time to deal with this immense disaster. And some things are still a little bit wonky. There is tons of overlapping voiceover at certain places, but hey, they give us more information there, and I couldn't be happy with that at the very least. So as they say here, under general changes, audio of that fractal was receiving numerous improvements. The server performance apparently was slightly optimized. No idea what that was there. You do now have to complete all 4 colliders regardless of scale. I'll talk about that in a second. They fixed a bug that could cause the checkpoint to be reset at the beginning, and then lots of minor bugs. I'm not even really sure what those are. So the 4 colliders thing, what is this? Well, it used to be that in early scale versions of Thaumanova reactor, you'd have multiple different rooms you could go to. You could just choose which ones you wanted, and on the low scales you only had to do a few, and then you would just be able to leave, and it was only on the very high scales you had to do all of them. Well, now that's like that regardless, and I think that that's just to encourage people to really see everything and learn all of the encounters. Remember, the idea of low scale fractals is to encourage new people into the game type, yes, but also to teach them and inform them as they climb. And it doesn't quite work if the low scale, there is no low scale equivalent of some of the more difficult areas, right? Because people just skip, for example, the ooze. So you can't do that anymore, and I think that that's why they did that. I think that that's very smart. So the main hall, right, this is the main thing that the fractal starts off with. Used to be that there were these big portals around and they pull you, and it was kind of annoying. It could even sometimes bug and you'd go flying into the air. You'd only have to kill a couple of script, and then that kind of sequence was done. Well, now there's a lot of dialogue, as they say here. They've replaced all the existing spawns with new ones. They've added many more. The portals have changed. They no longer pull you in any longer. Basically, you've just got to kill more things around there. It's pretty smooth sailing. It's just a different introduction to the Fractal, really. And the liquid in the lower area no longer applies burning, so you're a bit safer wading through that. And then, of course, you've got the side rooms. So you're going to be watching this slowly as the video goes along. I'm not going to describe every little bit. You'll be able to see. My favorite change, though, I would say, is the Subject 6 lab. This is the ooze that you have to fight.
In case you haven't noticed, we're running out of time. Yes, the experiment will probably kill you, but it will also advance the Inquest's march toward total world domination.
And they've refined this a lot. It's really cool. So now, if an ooze gets in to the boss will heal. It used to heal by a huge amount. Now it heals by a lot less. So it's not so binary. Oh god, we let a single ooze in and then we failed. Now lots of little oozes can get in, but to counterbalance that, at certain periods of time, there are big yellow oozes, and these ones are champions with break bars. So you can't like just easily mob them. You have to properly CC them down, and these guys will heal him a lot. So it's a lot more piecemeal. There's a lot more play. There's more place for hard CCs, for example, in this Fractal now than I believe there was before, and I think it's pretty cool. The other really nice change then as well is the end of the Fractal, where you get to fight the anomaly. Now, this has had some new stuff. There's actually NPC allies there with you now. And what they do is they give you a special action hotkey that you can pop to provide a safe space on the floor that will not be deleted beneath your feet. But it's got a long cooldown. But you have 5 people who have the special action hotkey. So if you all like rotate through it carefully enough and smartly enough, that Fractal suddenly has a lot more play. That final boss has a lot more play. It will be really interesting. Also, there's certain abilities that won't CC you when you use them against him now. It's great. It's really cool. My only issue with it is Thaumanova was one of those Fractals where if you were really good, you could kind of just clear the main room and then everyone would split up in all different directions and wipe all the side rooms, and then you'd be done very quickly. And under the new implementation, I don't think that's quite so possible anymore. It's still sort of possible, but one of the most fun things you could do in Fractals was soloing one of the rooms on a mesmer, where you'd use a portal and you'd hit a button through a wall and stuff, and they kind of removed all of that, which is a bit of a shame, but I guess I understand that it was obscure and unintentional, so hey, that's what they've done there. So yeah, the Thaumanova is the rework. I will hold my hands up here. I was wrong in one of my speculations before this patch came out. I was really banking on, really hoping for a Molten Boss rework. That didn't happen in the end. There is no Harbinger in the Thaumanova rework or anything like that. There's no, nightmare mode. We literally just have the Thaumanova reactor, no leather farm along with it. The challenging leather farm is actually found elsewhere in the patch, and you may want to go check out the portal if you want to see what that's all about. So yeah, I was happy to get in there, play it, and more revamp to the Fractals is always good, right? If you remember on the previous patch, they actually said when Nightmare came out that they were thinking that they had another one nearly ready. This was probably it. So there we go. Moving on, let's talk about some other Fractals. So the Thaumanova got the main rework. There were changes to other ones as well. Aetherblade had quite a few changes. I don't have footage of this, but they've reworked the room where you've got lots of those little traps with the rotating energy walls. This was a really fiddly room to deal with. Well, they've changed the way that it does damage. They've stopped it proccing on pets and minions, general quality of life stuff. And at the wall at the end of the Fractal, and this is a really cool change, the electric shield that applies to the golem. So the mechanic here, guys, is you've got to kill a bunch of golems in a big room, and when an electric wall passes through them, they start blocking. Before this patch, they would block for 3 seconds. It was really frustrating. Now they only block for 1, which is great, and you can kind of play around it. It is basically making Fractals easier, and I would say a lot of the little changes here seem to be making Fractals easier, but I'm kind of happy to see that exact change. Also, they used to get Might, apparently, which you couldn't corrupt or strip, and now you can, which is also obviously very cool. Chaos got a change. So the final fight in the Chaos Fractal, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but you got a big Char to kill. He has an energy shield, making him invulnerable, and meaning you can't apply conditions to him. But if he stands on the wrong place on the floor, he'll stand on electricity, it will short his shield out, and then he's vulnerable again. And the idea of this fight is you're supposed to keep him on the floor as best you can to keep him vulnerable. But the way that they had it implemented before was if his shield ever came back, which it frequently would, because the electric floor would go away and you just accidentally have his shield come back. When it came back, he wouldn't just become immune to conditions, he'd actually cleanse all of his conditions as well, which is really bad and quite quite a profound thing, so they've changed that now. He won't cleanse conditions, he'll just basically get resistance, which is the way it should always have been, and I'm happy to see that they made such a logical and obvious change, especially in terms of consistency with other places we see mechanics like that in the game. Snowblind as well had a change, or a couple of changes, more small quality of life things. They moved one of those singularities that was in an awful position. The ice elemental boss now properly resets. This was a fight where you could basically die and everyone could wipe, but it wouldn't reset its health, and now it does that. They reduced some chill, they improved some spawning animations, probably because of the Bitter Frost Frontier stuff. Swamp had a change, which actually hit my group very recently. Listen to this. Fixed an issue in which being downed while holding a wisp during the final bloom hunger phase would not allow the wisp to respawn. I actually had a friend the other day, just 2 days ago, who was playing Swampland with me. He grabbed this wisp, and then he DC'd and left the instance, and we had to redo Swamp. So they fixed that. Uncategorized had some changes where they've added a new checkpoint, and they've fixed a bug with battery meters not properly resetting, which I think is to do with the middle room with the poison. They've changed the underground facility, where one of the final boss there now only targets players instead of players, pets, and minions with one of his ice spike attacks, which means he will AoE much less of the area, and again makes that fractal a lot easier. Volcanic, huge change here, had a cutscene at the start that you could never skip before, and now you can skip, so again, that's a great change for consistency. That one was always really annoying. And then lastly, we have Nightmare. So Nightmare is the newest fractal. Nightmare has lots of different iterations. Nightmare I love and play all of the time. I'll read all of the changes. They fixed some issues here, and let me tell you guys, since A Crack in the Eyes came out, almost every single day I've played Nightmare, and almost every single day I've experienced some new thing happen there. But some of this stuff I've still never seen that they've now patched. So they say, for example, fixed an issue in which Enceladus could use Rampage before his final phase on challenge mode. This could happen. Basically, he would trigger an animation for a specific ability before you would ever expect it, but people, you know, would have their wits about them and they'd dodge it, so not a big deal. The next patch note I didn't understand for the longest time and actually had to get help with in the end. There's something about the way they described this goo puddle that was throwing me off. So listen, the crush attack Enceladus uses when he spawns is now unblockable, making another goo puddle easier for Guardians to obtain. This is talking about the achievement where you stand under him where he spawns. I guess Aegis on the Guardian profession was meaning that that achievement was hard for them to get. So they fixed it. That's what it means. Moving on, they say fix an issue in which Enceladus' Defiance bar could be broken right before casting Nightmare Devastation, which would cause him to cast it when Arc's shield is gone. That I knew was a possible thing that could happen, but never actually happened to my group ever, so it was a very rare fringe scenario, and they fixed. His attacks will no longer knock back or pull pets and minions, so the pets will stay the same. I think this could be a thing where maybe it has a 5-target cap or something, and because of pets and minions, it wouldn't affect players, perhaps? Not something I really run into much because I don't really play Necros in there, but I know a lot of people do. Fix an issue with the second bosses, that's Syax's Toxic Blast, which would show the first AoE telegraph for far too long, and that was something that's tripped me up before. And then finally, they fixed a bug for one of the achievements we all got ages ago, which it was too easy to get, basically, and now it really is within what the achievement describes. So, as you can see there, lots of a variety of small changes across tons of different fractals, but mainly Thaumanova had the big one. Now, let's talk about global changes and big global effects. Now, these are some of the more interesting things that have affected fractals in a big way, and hallelujah to the first one. Oh my god, I love this. So listen, the Fractals Initiate, Adept, and Experts chests, okay? So this is when you go in and do your dailies, which is what most Guild Wars 2 players do, all right? These chests have had their resonating slivers replaced by a large mist, offensive, or defensive potion. Okay, this is huge for two reasons. Number one, we're now getting large potions. Large potions are pretty rare. Large potions, if you have infinite potions already, you can trade in for like lots of relics. So this is just extra reward for everyone. Or the potions are really good for you new guys who might be coming in, because the potions give you so much sustain. We're talking like 25% more damage, 25% reduced incoming damage, tons more endurance, and buffs to tons of your stats. These potions are massive. And basically what this means is if you go in there and you do your dailies every day, you can get one of each of these large potions just for the worth of the daily. So it's kind of like you don't even need infinite potions anymore, because those potions will last 2 hours. They'll cover all your playtime every day in Fractals. So you'll go in, do a daily, daily, get all your potions, then tomorrow you'll pop those potions, and those potions will last you getting the next set of potions. And you've kind of got infinite potions without needing to go for the infinite potion, the actual infinite potions, which is cool, even though I have the infinite ones, and I feel like, you know, that might have been a waste now. I think this is still really good, and this is great for newer people getting in. Also, I think it's really important that the devs do push those potions out and make them more accessible to people without the infinites. And the reason I say this is because the fractal potions are so strong right now, yet sort of rare still, that the devs aren't balancing or designing fractal difficulty around their existence. And this means that there's kind of, when you have all the potions, when you have a full team full of the potions, the fractals can get kind of easy. I am a big believer that the current T4s, the current top end, is too easy. And I think it's because potions specifically, and maybe some other things to do with the meta right now, but potions really have power creeped us absurdly in fractals. So the devs doing this, putting the large potions on the dailies, what this means, guys, is they can gear and angle themselves in the future to actually start designing future nightmares and future challenge modes and harbingers and things like that to actually require players to have the potions, and they won't have a backlash because of that, because they are more accessible, if this all makes sense. So I think that's really strong. And the other amazing thing about this, let's listen to it again. These fractal chests have had their resonating slivers replaced. Thank Christ. And we get rid of the resonating slivers. I have major beef with resonating slivers. I think that is one of the ugliest, stupidest, like, economical, most ridiculous decisions that was ever made in Guild Wars 2. This is a currency that is absolute bloat for anyone who gets it. I'm saving my rant on it for when I talk about guild halls in a Big Heart of Thorns review at some point. But yes, resonating slivers are going away, and holy crap, that needs to happen game-wide on dailies. Jesus. But this is a start, at least, I suppose. So they are also changing the way dailies work a little bit, by the way. Right now, it's a 14-day rotation. So on day 1, you're going to be asked to do 3 fractals. On day 2, you're going to be asked to do 3 different fractals. And on day 3, it's a different combination. Day 4, and that goes on for 14 days, right? And what this means is every 2 weeks it loops, because it's 14 days. They're changing it now to a 15-day rotation. And what that means, because that extra day is there, it means that you don't have an immaculate 2-week cycle. It's like, it's going to feel more random. It's harder to predict exactly what is actually running each day because it's been offset, and I guess they felt that was important, and well, so they've done that. Another thing, buffs to rewards. If you salvage trinkets now, you get stabilizing matrices instead of +1 infusions. That could affect the +1 infusion market, by the way, and make it a little bit more difficult to climb with agony, but I think that's fine because gear progression is a part of the fun of fractals. I know some people contend with me on that, but hey. Here's something very interesting. Something I was expecting from the new map, but actually turns out to have been a fractal change. So, for those that are out the loop, the Nightmare Fractal, when you beat it, it gives you access to a specific vendor tab over at like the Elite Rewards vendor in the Fractals, and this is where you get a lot of very, very special prizes. Well, added to those special prizes for the Nightmare Fractal rewards is the Watch Night Tonic. So, this is one of your main places of acquisition for the Watch Night Tonic, and they do say, here we go, it has been improved to function just like the Kodan Tonic. So, there you go, we do now have an infinite, everlasting Watch Night Tonic. I can't wait to use that. I think that's going to be great. In fact, I kind of want to use as much of that as possible in as much footage as I can for the next really long period of time. I should have done that in this Fractal, shouldn't I? I suppose we were transformed into an Inquest at the time, so whatever. But yes, they've also added some other things. The Antitoxin Injector skin, a few minis, and also pristine toxic spore samples, which are worth a reasonable amount on the trading post, are now awarded for doing the Nightmare Fractal challenge mode. So those will come in like blade shards were coming in, and apparently there's a rare chance for a jackpot. Not that I've hit it, but that's nice to see, I suppose. Moving on, the last fractal-based stuff that has changed is once again some updates to the instabilities. I think the instabilities as a core concept are really cool. For those that don't know, this is an active effect that ends up getting placed on players as they climb through fractals, which modifies the environment and the way that enemies interact with you. So you might get an active effect on you, an instability, which means that now all the enemies in the fractals are leaving toxic poison trails behind themselves. Or you might get a different one that means that enemies explode when they die. Or you might get a different one which means that every now and then a bomb attaches itself randomly to one of your players and it's about to explode. And as you climb fractals, Fractals, you won't just be under the effects of one of these active effects, but you can be under the effects of 2 at once, and eventually 3 at once. These are really cool idea. They can be pushed in some astounding directions. We did see when Nightmare came out, when Chaos came out, that they added a new one, which added even more random wild effects. I want to see ArenaNet push this a lot harder. I want to see them refine some of theirs. So, for example, one of them puts boons on enemies, and right now that's just protection, fury, and might, I think. And I'd love to see regeneration be added on that, just to push this idea of needing a lot more boon strip. Hell, I'd love to see something like that be baseline, so that this idea of strip does continue to have a place. But moving on, they have continued to update some, maybe not as far as I'd like to see it pushed, but here are the changes. The toxic trails I just mentioned a second ago, they now not only do damage, but they also poison you. So the poison, because a lot of players in Guild Wars 2 are trained to look at their active effects, the actual poison condition on you will make it more obvious that, oh, hey, maybe I'm standing in something I shouldn't be, because a lot of players, you know, they might not notice. So they did this more for that reason, the telegraphing, but the fact that poison is on there now as well does make this a bit more of a deadly instability, because poison, it won't necessarily do much damage, but it does reduce incoming heals, and it's a very good idea to run a heal support in Fractals these days, and that's going to be impacting them. So I quite like that. Another instability, Afflicted, is responsible for a lot of Condi application in Fractals. Well, it used to, if you got struck with confusion, as enemies hit you because of this, it used to be 5 stacks of confusion at once, which I guess is a bit high. I never really felt it to be too high, but I guess it was. They've actually nerfed that, so that's easier to deal with now. It's gone from 5 stacks to 2, so it won't hit you so hard. Last Laugh, the instability where enemies explode when they die. Again, I mentioned a second ago, they used to explode exactly 1 second after dying. Now it's 1 and 3/4 seconds. So you've got an extra 3/4 of a second to notice that Last Laugh is there and some giant explosion might be about to hit you, and you get to react accordingly, again making Fractals easier. The Flux Bomb, again a bomb that randomly attaches to one of your players, I mentioned a second ago. This does randomly apply to different party members, but now it won't apply to the same dude like twice in a row, because that would be really frustrating, I guess, to that one dude, and they just wanted to reduce that variance there. And then also it won't actually do any damage or conditions on the first tick. Fun. Okay, and so the last one is Social Awkwardness. This one I've left for last because I do feel that this is the most important one. Social Awkwardness, guys, is an instability that will hit you in all the Fractals very late on, okay, through T4. I believe maybe even a little bit earlier. Social Awkwardness, again, is something I actually think should be baseline through all of Fractals. What this does is it applies agony to you. See, classically in Fractals, you need agony resist to defend from this brutal condition, but only certain bosses, certain animations, certain things deal it. So you can kind of get away, you can kind of sneak your way through Fractals without even building any agony resistance, because you just avoid those specific things. Social Awkwardness kind of takes that away, and that's good. People should have to be building the gear. What Social Awkwardness does is it means when you are in combat, if you stand directly on top of an ally, if you stack, right, which is, you know, what so much of Guild Wars 2's endgame had criticism, whether valid or not, for so many years. If you stack in Fractals, Social Awkwardness causes you to do agony damage to one another, and then even if you have max AR, it will really start hurting you. It will reduce the amount of damage that people can heal back up through, and if you haven't built the gear progression, you're basically screwed. So Social Awkwardness is really important of an instability. It is the most important of instabilities, in my opinion, and learning to play around it is a big part of Fractals, but it can be frustrating, and I agree with all the changes that the devs made here. I'm going to read them out verbatim. So number 1, they say reduce the damage region radius from 60 to 44 to better match the effect. Okay, what do they mean by that? Well, when Social Awkwardness procs, there's a visual effect. It's like a purpley ring hoop around you thing. And so what was happening before this patch, before the head of the snake, was that animation for that ring was actually smaller than the range that the Social Awkwardness would actually inflict agony on your friends. That was a little bit bigger. So now they've tuned it in. So now basically you can stand closer to people without putting Social Awkwardness on them. That is huge. That's a pretty significant buff for builds that rely on being very close to people. For example, if you've ever tried to play a druid that's maintaining Grace of the Land on people through the trait Verdant Etching, punishing. I appreciate that's a bit of a mouthful for the people that don't play Druid, but if you've been doing that, it's kind of annoying in Fractals because you can move in and you can so easily put social awkwardness on other people. Well, now the range is smaller and you can get away with that, and that opens up some nice things. Also, going on, they've reduced the duration of social awkwardness from 3 seconds to 2. So it's just straight up 66% weaker. It will still punish the hell out of anyone who doesn't have agony resist, but now it's not quite so punishing for groups that do want to get a little bit closer together while maintaining the desired impact of having people constantly move. It's kind of like another version of seaweed salad in that respect. And again, I actually think that's a pretty substantial nerf to it. Again, making Fractals easier, but I think it's a good idea. And then lastly, here's the other big change, right? Instead of damaging your allies, you will damage yourself for a maximum of 3 hits per second if you're standing near 3 or more allies. Right, so the way that it worked before this patch was if I ran into you, you would take the damage and you would get angry at me. Now, if I run into you, I take damage. So I'm being punished for my own misplays. So it's more transparent when I'm out of position and when I'm deliberately taking damage I don't have to, and I'm not getting anybody else's backup from doing that necessarily. They also add that this will allow healers to stack up a bit more for healing without killing themselves, and then it also punishes the players themselves for attacking their allies rather than punishing the allies for their bad play, which is basically what I just explained. So I do agree with the social awkwardness changes. I'm worried though, because again, I am very much in this position where I feel like Fractals deserve a real tune-up, but maybe that's just something for the future. Maybe they have eyes in the next expansion to push it to 150 top scale or something. Instead of 104 dungeons, it's 150, and then that's where they're going to create the more elite encounters or something. I really don't know, but yeah, it's a ton of stuff, guys. Like, such a huge amount of the patch was on Fractals. Let me know what you think about this video. I often say that at the end as we close these out, but I really mean it, and I really do want to know what you guys think. This is kind of a very specific thing. I'll be watching the views on this. I'll be watching the likes on this. I want to know whether doing such a dedicated look at one small part of the patch is worth it in the end, because obviously the demographic gets cut down a lot. So do give me your feedback, guys. Was this worth it? Should we in future portals dedicate something like this to, say, just Fractals or just PvP or something? I would love to hear it. But there you go, guys. I felt it was worth it, at least for now, to have a little bit of a look. I hope you're enjoying the patch. Hope you're having fun or enjoying the content. And I guess if you're devouring all of it, I'll see you back on the portal for another video. Plenty more to come, guys. Catch you next time.